So our final presentation for the evening is Peter Hiscox. Peter is the head of our Light Pollution Abatement Committee, which is why he gets the great title of Prince of Darkness. So Peter's going to be talking about the new City of Toronto guidelines on lighting and other developments in light pollution. Peter.
Okay, thank you, Tom. All right, let's wait for the technology to catch up here. Yeah, you have to be careful where you mention the term Prince of Darkness. It means special things to certain people. So this is about what's been going on in light pollution. Myself with other people as well thought I would bring the group up to date. And the clicker doesn't work. Let's see. No, next slide, please. Okay, back one. There we are. Okay, so our first project to talk about is contacting the municipalities. I like to say, as far as lighting salespeople are concerned, they are many, and the light pollution people, we are few. So there's a tremendous effort going on in the lighting industry to sell street lighting to municipalities. Some of it is not very good lighting, and so we undertook a project to contact all the municipalities in Ontario to give them a bit of a heads up on this. There are 424 municipalities in Ontario. Even getting a list is a bit of a struggle because the Ontario Association of Municipalities want $800 to give you the list. I managed to get it out of the Ministry of the Environment, dock them into giving us one for free. And Allard helped me set this up, the spreadsheet with the names and email addresses, and then we worked our way through them. About 150 have converted to LED street lighting, and I know of at least one case where the early adopter now has buyer's remorse on what they installed. It's excessively bright, and they don't have control over being able to dim it, and the color temperature isn't that great. So LED lighting is not a cure-all, and we hope to head off some of this at the pass by notifying people on this. Next slide, please. And this is a list of all the municipalities. I had no idea that there were all these municipalities in Toronto, all the way from Addington Highlands down to Zora. Have you heard of Zora Municipality? So there they are. We worked our way through all of them. It was a bit of a slog actually doing this, and Allard helped out with some of the grunt work. Okay, so next one. So project number 2, monitoring sky glow, and the Toronto Centre purchased 2 sky quality meters from Unihedron, and we installed one of them at the Carr Astronomical Observatory up in Collingwood, which is the rural location, and the second one at the David Dunlap Observatory, which was the urban location, with the idea that we could compare sky glow at a rural location and an urban location. Of course, we lost the DDO when it closed, and that's been in limbo. In the last week, I've been talking to Rachel Ward-Maxwell, our contact here, and we had a tour of the Ontario Science Centre, and so it's looking up that we may be able to install a second one actually overhead here at this very location. Next slide, please. So there's the Carr Astronomical. This little cylinder on the right-hand side here with a window on it is the actual light meter, and that next slide, please. And the cylinder at the top of the pole at the David Dunlap Observatory, and of course that one has come down since. And the next slide, please. And then this is the Science Center, and if you see the radio antenna at the top of the highest point on the building, we were up there last week scouting locations, and that's a perfect location for mounting the sky quality meter. The possible fly in the ointment is that we have to pay for the installation, so we have to pay for lightning arresters, and I hope that's not going to be too terribly expensive. Anyway, that's underway, and I hope we'll be able to report a success in that particular area very shortly. Next slide, please. This is the kind of result that you get from a sky quality meter. You get a graph with various readings. If you're familiar with the kinds of readings that you get from a sky quality meter, a value of 18 is typical for Toronto. highly light polluted area, and a value of 21 or 22 is a pretty pristine dark sky, which is out around Collingwood. Still pretty dark out there. So we hope to, Allard again is helping me with this, and we hope to have these graphs accessible to the public in the fullness of time. All right, next slide. Okay, so project number 3 was the producing a document with the City of Toronto called, originally called light pollution, something about light pollution, but it's now called Best Practices in Lighting. And this is the cover of the document. It's available to download from the RASC website. So you can download it, read it. It's in a large PDF, which is available to you. Next slide, please. So the history for this is kind of amusing. It started in 2007 with a committee of 16 people. And as time went on, the city does not move quickly on these things, I discovered. And as time went on, the committee dwindled down, and finally was finished this year with a committee of 2 people, which was me and and a person from the city, plus a photographer, Gabriel Guilin, if anybody knows Gabriel, who did the photographs. He's a member of the RASC, the Toronto RASC. 80 pages long, hundreds of images. We went for something that is really interesting to look at and has kind of the flavor of a National Geographic type document with full color and so on. It's available at this particular location on the RASC website. Next slide, please. Okay, so what we have is an introduction by a famous person. And Chris has written a very nice introduction, of which this is an excerpt, and he talks about the fear of the dark, and I think that's absolutely spot on. And there's some pictures taken from the International Space, that he took from the International Space Station, that are in the document of Toronto, okay? And he signs himself as a Torontonian, okay? So, which is very, very nice. Next slide, please. All right, so what has this document accomplished in this 10 years of meetings with the city? It doesn't mandate anything. It doesn't say you have to do anything, but it does make a number of recommendations. And I hope that eventually these recommendations will turn from you should do this to you must do this. So this is a process, and we're partway along that process. The things that should be controlled are, first of all, light trespass, which is light that shines onto your property from somebody's adjacent property. And the recommendation in the document is 1 lux at the property line, larger of a horizontal or a vertical measurement. This is important because traditionally light measurements are taken horizontally, and often it's the vertical measurement which is more intense than horizontal. So 1 lux at the property line is pretty strict. And so far, no pushback on that. So, and that's an example of light trespass, by the way, from the Parking Authority of Toronto into somebody's bedroom. All right, next slide. The next one is glare, which is really not well addressed by the lighting industry at all. They really haven't dealt with the issue of glare, and glare has become a major, major problem with LED lighting, because the LED lamps inherently have very high glare factors. So I have suggested that the glare, the limit of glare, limit of brightness on lamps should be 1,500 candelas per square meter. The candela per square meter is also known as a nit, okay? So you can call this a nitpicking exercise if you like. 1,500 candelas per square meter, just to put this in context, is like looking at a 60-watt light bulb. A frosted 60-watt light bulb is about 1,500 candelas per square meter. And you can look at it. It's not terribly comfortable, but you can look at it. LED lighting, I've measured LED lamps at over 1 million candelas per square meter. So it's, you know, they're horrifically bright. And I think we need to control this, and this essentially says, you cannot have something that's brighter than this where you can see the surface that's emitting the light. All right, so I hope this is progress, and I hope that eventually this will be made into a requirement. Next slide, please. All right, overlighting. Anybody recognize this particular site? This is the dealership at the bottom of Broadview and Eastern Avenue. What are those called? Minis? Yeah, it's a mini dealership. Anyway, typical street lighting level sidewalks in Riverdale where I live is around 3 or 4 lux. An intersection might be 20 lux. The sidewalk outside this particular location measures 800 lux in sidewalk. So this is, and car dealerships are the worst because they get into lighting competition with each other and who can who can produce the most light. This dealership is visible in photographs from the space station, all right, on an image of Toronto. So I'll talk a bit more about what can be done about this kind of thing, but obviously the document says, gee guys, this isn't a good idea, all right? Next one, please. Next slide. Then there is the issue of health. This has been huge. The American Medical Association, the president of the American Medical Association turns out to be an astronomer. And the American Medical Association came out with a statement on LED lighting which echoed what a number of researchers had been saying, is that blue light at night is harmful to your health. And when it came out from the American Medical Association, everybody started to pay attention. And so the issue of color temperature in lamps became a big issue. Many LED lamps have a lot of blue light component and are at 6,000 or 5,000 Kelvin. And this recommendation is that light should have no higher than 3,000 Kelvin. And that's had a dramatic effect on street lighting installations. And nearly everybody now is mandating 3,000 or below. I can talk more about health and exactly how this impacts people, but the main takeaway is sleep in a dark room. Don't sleep with the lights on. Don't sleep with a TV screen or a computer screen running. It affects the melatonin suppression, and it may affect your health in the long run. All right, so now I have some pictures of what I think are interesting lighting installations, both good and bad. So this is the viaduct, and this is the suicide barrier on the viaduct, which is lit up at night with LED lighting. I was originally strongly opposed to this whole installation. But I have to say, now that I've seen it, it's an amazing lighting installation. There is no glare from this thing at all. Notice how uniform the sidewalk is. You have to ignore the street lights. But along the sidewalk, it's completely uniform. There is no glare. There's no light shining into your eyes. It's a really interesting experience to walk across the viaduct in this light. It's really comfortable. And you realize how uncomfortable most existing street lighting is, because it goes from bright at about 30 lux down to dim at about 4 lux. So you're continuously going in and out of dark and bright spots, and you're dealing with the glare from the lamps. So it's a totally different experience. I recommend it. Some summer evening, walk across the viaduct. Next one, please. Okay, there's a bad one. Riverdale, my neighborhood, of course. And there are hundreds of these all across the city. Rinks, ballparks, you know, middle of the night, nobody's there, everything going full tilt boogie, right? Lit up like a prison yard. Okay, the Parks and Rec say, oh, well, you know, people ask us for this for security. I mean, who's going to do a mugging in the middle of the rink in Riverdale? It's insane. Anyway, I'm working on it. Okay, next one. Been down to the Distillery lately. Very, very nice street lighting in the Distillery. Does not shine in your eyes. Generally directed, as you can see here, directed to the walls. Even the light poles along the street, which could shine into your eyes, are run at such a level that it's not obtrusive. Very, very pleasant to go down there in the evening. And I think the lighting is a big part of that. They've been very, very good about their lighting. Next slide, please. Here's a bad example, and this is thousands and thousands of streets throughout Toronto. Actually, 165,000 light fixtures in the city of Toronto, all like this, that you know, off into the distance. And this is how you can tell they're not shielded, because as you stand there, you can look sometimes, some cases for miles, and you can see they're all lit up, right? The fact that you can see it from several miles away means it's not properly shielded. And I'll show you a counterexample in the next slide. Okay, and this is in Markham, and notice that as you look off into the distance, the lights disappear, right? They disappear from view. Not totally, you can still see them, but they're not as bright as they were in that previous photograph. And that means that the lights are directed downwards to street level, as they should be. All right? This is a new installation. This is an LED installation, and it's actually pretty good, I gotta say. So it was nice to see. Next slide. Okay, now project number 4, last one I want to talk about. This is not mine. This is by somebody else, Robert Dick, who is in Ottawa, and he's in the national version of this committee. He's the chair. And he has developed a light which Robert is involved in something called scotobiology. And scotobiology is the biology of things of the night. So it's the biology of bats and fireflies and other living things that come out at night. And living things are affected by the light on the left. As we all know, you know, insects are attracted to those lights, and that's one way they're affected. But there are all kinds of effects on the environment from that kind of light. And Robert developed an LED lamp which does not have glare, which is at a better color temperature. Notice that the one on the right is kind of an amber color as opposed to the bright white, and is directed downward so it doesn't shine into your eyes. And it's a clever optical arrangement as well, so the LEDs are hidden. Next slide is another picture of this. And here is a roadway that is lit up with these fixtures, which to me is just an amazing picture because the roadway is lit and you hardly see the fixtures at all or any glare from the fixtures. And I've actually attended a conference where Robert was demonstrating this fixture, and it's an amazing experience to be underneath one of these fixtures because it's like you could read just fine. It's like reading by candlelight. It has a very warm, comfortable feeling. There's no glare, and it works very well. So Robert has turned this into a commercial product, which he is now advertising on his website. So you could look that up if you are interested. And then I think the final slide. Yeah, so here's where you come in. There are a bunch of things that you can do. I know you're interested in astronomy, and for some perverse reason, I'm interested in light pollution. And I don't expect you to spend a lot of time on light pollution, but there are some things you could do that would really, really help me and the other people who are working on light pollution, which incidentally, the number of people in Canada working on light pollution, you could count on 2 hands, right? It's about 6 or 7 individuals like me, like Robert, and so on and so forth that are working on light pollution. This is against hundreds and hundreds of people in the lighting industry who are working in the opposite direction. So here's what you can do to help us. First of all, if anybody has any contacts at the Ministry of the Environment, I think one of the things we should do is go to the MOE and say, you know, those 443 municipalities could use some guidance on the design of their street lighting, and you guys should provide it. So that's something that can be done if anybody has a contact at the Ministry of the Environment. If you see a good lighting installation, you think, yeah, this is really nice, or gosh, this is terrible, photograph it, or send me an email saying, go look at this. This is really horrible. Or even better, go and measure it and tell us how bad it is, all right? I'm interested to hear about these things. That's how I heard about Markham. Paul told me about that. He said, go and look at the ones in Markham. So I did, and indeed they are very, very good. Contact the owners of bad lighting installations. If you see a really lousy lighting installation like that car dealership I showed you earlier, write to them. Some of the people respond in a very positive way, and they say, gee, I just had no idea that this was a problem, and so on and so forth. And you get somebody on your side who's going to help you fix that problem. And the last one is also very important. One of the things I do is go and speak to groups, professional engineers and schools and that kind of thing, Boy Scouts and so on. If you know of a group, an environmental group or a group that would be interested in a talk on light pollution, is a very important educational function because most people don't know anything about light pollution. And when you explain it to them and you just say, well, it really is bad design and lighting, and if you do good design, gee, we might be able to see the Milky Way over Toronto again as we could up until 1985, you know. People respond to that. Well, let me ask an interesting question here. How many people here have seen the Milky Way? Right? Everybody. You know, when I ask this question in a high school or in a university class, I get maybe 2 out of 20 people that have seen the Milky Way. Is that not a tragedy? Is that not a crisis? I think it is. So this is why we have to speak to them. We have to say things like, go to a dark sky site and look up. Somebody said to me, do we need a telescope to see the Milky Way? I say, no, you just need your Mark I eyeball. Okay? So if you know architects or you know environmental, people active in environmental organizations or whatever, tell me about them and I'll contact them and I'll set up a speaking engagement and we'll spread the word on this. So thank you very much. That's your update for this year, and we'll be back. Tom, we're ahead of time. I know. Do we want to entertain questions?
Well, actually, yeah, Peter, we are sort of running a little ahead of schedule, Ian. So does anyone have any questions? Yes,
yeah, I'm a visitor.
Yeah.
Peter, get it.
Yeah. I spent 23 years in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And the town of Tekapo in the Mackenzie region actually has regulations for lighting. Right. It was prompted by the Mount John Observatory, but they now have a major tourist attraction. People from all over the world, especially Asia, especially China, where they cannot, I work in China, I can't see the stars. And they go to New Zealand, and I've seen, not just the Milky Way, I've seen the Magellanic Clouds lying in the backyard of the town of Twizel, which is just a little ways down the roads from Tekapo. So it's just fantastic. And they actually have an international quality lighting control system like this. Everything's downward, everything's shielded. They don't, 3000 K. They are the epitome of this kind of thing.
One of the things that the National RASC Light Pollution Committee does is establish dark sky preserves. So these are parks where dark skies are particularly preserved across Canada. So that's sort of in the same direction.
Absolutely.
But I was asked in a meeting by the director of street lighting for Toronto Hydro. She was kind of incredulous about this whole idea of, downward lighting and so on. And she said, you really think that we're going to be able to see the stars from the city of Toronto again? And I said, up until 1985, we could see the Milky Way. So, we're facing a number of environmental issues, global warming, for example, which are these are big things. But light pollution is relatively trivial and relatively easy to fix. That's the good news. We just have to do it. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
In reference to that AMA advisory on LED lighting, would it be useful to contact the Ministry of Transportation about the LED lighting in cars? Yes. A lot of new cars have these horrible bright LED lights, which is very uncomfortable to drive against.
Yes. Yeah, I know people my age who stop driving because they can't deal with the glare. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Oh, yeah. Headache inducing for sure. Oh.
Anybody want to pick up on that?
Contact Sylvania.
Yeah. Chris?
Do you have any sample wording or text or templates that people can use to approach businesses or even their neighbors in a respectful and pleasant way.
The International Dark Sky Association has material on its website that is specifically directed to that. Yeah, so that's where I would go, the IDA website. The International Dark Sky Association is an organization in the United States which has been very effective in creating light standards that are dark sky friendly and incorporate the kinds of features that we're talking about. They work very closely with the lighting industry, and in Canada we've had some reservations about particular aspects of the agreements that they worked out. But in overall, they've been very, very effective, and they do very good work. International Dark Sky Association. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much.